listening frequencies open. Welcome back to Trek Retrek here on Geek the F Out. I'm Captain Johnny.
I'm Ensign Kayla.
And we are here to talk about Season 2, Episode 6 of Star Trek, the original series, The Doomsday Machine.
Doomsday. Indeed, we are. If you haven't watched this before, the whole premise of Trek Retrek is that Johnny has watched everything Star Trek, and I have watched only up to this point in the original series, as well as Strange New Worlds. So this is my first Trek through everything, and we're going episode by episode from the very beginning and talking about them from our two very different perspectives. So yeah, thanks for joining us, whether you're watching this live on the premiere or on a replay. Yeah, thanks for hopping on. Make sure to smack that like, smack that subscribe, smack that bell icon, please and thank you. Helps us out a lot.
If you haven't watched this before, why are you starting here? Go back and watch the first episode.
I don't know. What if someone really likes this episode and just wants to see content on that? You never know. Don't yuck people's yums, Johnny.
I'm not. I'm just saying. You're welcome to.
You're just
do
curious.
It backwards. Yeah, I'm just curious.
I've done that sometimes with certain things. Not usually when they're talking about shows, though, but if it's just like a podcast, sometimes I'll just go backwards for fun. It's kind of and it's kind of interesting to see the like backwards progression of things too, especially with podcasts because they're just very awkward at the beginning, just like ours were. Dear God, some of those first episodes of ours is just like, ooh, so much cringe. Even our intro video is just bad.
Yeah, I thought about
we might have to
the intro video.
I was gonna say maybe we should re-record it.
But we just start. Neither of us had ever done it before, so we were podcast virgins.
Yes, we were.
Anyway, TVGuide.com says the Doomsday Machine, while on a mission to investigate the mass destruction of entire planetary systems, Kirk encounters a crippled starship, its desperate captain, and an unstoppable planet-eating machine. That sounds so much better than the IMDb one. Like, the IMDb one is like the USS Enterprise encounters the wrecked USS Constellation and its distraught Commodore, who's determined to stop the giant planet-destroying robot ship that killed his crew. Like, the TVGuide.com one is so much better, I think.
Yeah.
There's more gravitas.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. Let's just get into it. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I noticed that the intro music, not the Star Trek theme song, essentially. Not that, but the literal intro music sounded a little bit different. And we start off on the bridge, and there's someone else in Uhura's seat.
Yeah, that's literally my first note. I'm like, where's Uhura?
What the dick?
Why?
Where is she? I need to know. And Kirk is wearing his signature crossbody V-neck thing. But yeah, we find out her name is Palmer. And yeah, don't know why she's there and Uhura isn't. I mean, we saw this in the first season. Like, clearly not everyone's there all the time, which if it was a TV show nowadays, like, unless their plot has them somewhere else, it's very weird for them to not be there for no reason.
Yeah. It's because, realistically, there are probably times where that, like, Kirk's on the bridge and none of those characters that we know are there.
Shifts.
Yeah, in the world of television, typically, if you have a crew like this, it's all the same people there all the time. So it's interesting. And I think, is Chekhov not in this episode either?
I think I put it at the bottom of my note. No Uhura or Chekhov.
Yeah. So, like, there are two bridge people that aren't there. I don't know. Yeah.
And also, we talked about this last episode, but with Rand not being there, they don't explain that at all. I don't know.
Nope.
Which they definitely would do nowadays. They'd be like, oh, she's out on an internship, kind of like how Chapel does. But that
the only people that you are almost guaranteed to see in every single episode are Kirk, Spock, and Bones. Otherwise, it's a crapshoot on whether they're going to be in the show or not.
Yeah. Don't know about Sulu. Don't know about Scotty. Don't know about Chekhov. Don't know about her. Don't know about Chapel. It's a shame. Anyways, so they found an entire solar system has basically been destroyed, or almost all of it's been destroyed, but the star is still intact. And so yeah, I guess there's 2 planets left, which later in the episode it gets really confusing because then the 3rd one is destroyed, but then they said I don't know. At this point there's only 2 planets left. And I also made the note that I know I've been noticing in the last couple episodes, but this one in particular, the shots looked a lot clearer. So I don't know if like this season they got better cameras or something.
Maybe.
I don't know if you noticed that. And just like the camera angles, like it's not as like fuzzy and blurry as some of the first season's episodes are. And that's probably just, you know, director's choice / editing. I'm guessing, and lighting probably.
It's possible that they upgraded equipment for the 2nd season too. Maybe they're newer cameras, or they switched. They could have even switched to a different film stock. Like it could be as simple as that. Or as they went on, their remastering methods got better because they did this. If I'm remembering correctly, they did this in an interest like. They would have remastered season 1 and released it and then come back to remaster season 2. They wouldn't have done I don't believe they did the whole series in one go. So the remastering, like the film scanning and upscaling and that could have improved between season 1 and season 2 as well.
Interesting. Okay. And then they come across the starship Constellation, which has been wrecked. And at this point, I was like, oh, yeah, the music is definitely different. And there were I called you out for being a nerd last episode. This is my nerd moment because it almost sounds like the Pelennor Fields soundtrack from Howard Shore's soundtrack for Return of the King. If you don't know, I can't help you because it's like one of the most famous scenes from Lord of the Rings. So they're still trying to figure out what's going on with the planets in the ship. And so Kirk, Scotty, McCoy, and 3 others beam on board of the Constellation, which I found interesting that they didn't beam to the transport room, but I'm guessing it was because the transport room wasn't working.
Possible.
They just beamed onto the ship because obviously they beam onto planets that don't have transport rooms, and like they have the capability of beaming everywhere, but it's just very interesting how anyone who's ever come onto the Enterprise has gone into the transport room, and it's the same ship essentially, right?
So yes. So here's another nerd moment. So what they do when they, well, even that's not. So when they beam, they go to their transporter room. Even if we don't see it, they're always, it's implied that they're always going to the transporter room and then beaming down to the planet. When they're beaming from their ship, they're going to beam anywhere. Like, so that's probably why they beamed right to where they need to go. If the Constellation was beaming them over, they probably would have beamed to the transporter room onto the Constellation. But since the Constellation wasn't manned and wasn't doing the transport, the Enterprise was, they just put them where they went. They can, however, and I don't know if it's done in TOS. I know it's done in Next Generation a couple of times. There's also site-to-site transport. Like, they could have beamed right from the bridge of the Enterprise to wherever on the Constellation and not gone to either of the transporter rooms. Or, like, beamed, if they were down on the planet, Kirk could technically say, beam me right to the bridge, or beam directly to sickbay. It's implied in universe for whatever wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey reason, not timey-wimey, but I said wibbly-wobbly and thought Doctor Who. For whatever hand-wavy reason, site-to-site transports use more power than transports from the transporter pad to the location, or vice versa.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I figured it was because like the ship was down, so the the transporter room is obviously not being manned by anyone, it's probably not working.
Yeah.
So I figured that it was just interesting to see because I feel like every other time we've seen someone beam onto a ship, it's to the transporter room.
Yeah.
Um so then we have Scott and the boys, as I'm calling them, are going to the engine room. Meanwhile, Kirk thinks that they all just left, and Spock says that they couldn't have gone down to the planets either. So they really don't know what the hell is going on here. So they go to the auxiliary control room and they find Commodore Matt Decker passed out, which for the rest of my notes, I pretty much just call him Matt to make it easier instead of, Commodore Decker or Decker, just Matt, one syllable. And Bones shoots him up with something, and he says that they were attacked, but is currently in a state of shock and can't really tell them by what. Um, and he says that he beamed them down to the third planet and everything was out on the ship, and then something hit them, and he calls the thing the devil. But yeah, so he says that he sent them down to the third planet, which is gone now,
Mm.
unfortunately, and he's very upset about that. And he says the whole thing is a weapon. It's huge. He doesn't know if it's a creature or a ship, and it pretty much just will break up planets with anti-proton beams and then eat them. And but Spock calls it a robot that smashes planets and ingests the debris for fuel, essentially. And then Sulu has plotted that this sentence does not make sense. That it came from has plotted that it came from another galaxy, the Doomsday device.
Yeah, I
And
thought that was interesting. That like part of me is like, well, galaxies are
how
not
do you
close
know that?
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you're doing some heavy lifting with your guesses there because you're like in the middle of your
Hmm.
galaxy. Um, and
And yeah, I'm like, how many other places have been destroyed that you're able to plot? And also, I'm sure there could be a pattern to it, but what also if it was a random like direction it was going?
right. Um, and how did it have enough fuel to get from one galaxy to another? Because there's not anything between galaxies in outer spaces. There's no planets for it to destroy and refuel.
I don't
Um,
know.
and
Asteroids?
galaxies are pretty far apart. Maybe it's very. Although I feel like if it was extremely energy efficient, it it wouldn't have needed to destroy and eat so many planets. Uh,
I mean, maybe it does, and then it saves it better. But it
Maybe.
seems like from what we find out later in this episode that it was already getting weak because it hadn't fed on anything in a minute, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, interesting to think about. Kirk talks about it being a doomsday machine, like I just mentioned, years ago, and it is now still destroying things, unfortunately. And Kirk decides to stay on board and Bones and Matt go back to the Enterprise, and they decide to tow the Constellation along. And so back on board the Enterprise, there's a red alert, and the robot machine thing is coming at them. And Kirk and Spock try to figure out what to do. And just as the others, or Kirk, Scotty, and the others are trying to beam back, the robot fires on them, so the transporter is damaged, and of course they lose communication too, which take 2 drinks because both of those things happen at once. And then the robot veers off towards Rigel, which how many times have we heard Rigel now?
Quite a few. That'll come up.
Yeah.
Spoilers for my spoilers without
Okay.
context.
I'm not crazy that it's come up a lot.
No.
Yeah. And then
Rigel 6, Rigel 7. It's a pretty big. Seems to be a pretty big colony for the
mhm,
Federation. Because he does say
mhm.
they'll kill. Did he say millions of people, thousands of people?
I don't know.
Something
I
like
can't
that.
remember.
There's a lot of people in the
Something
Rigel
like
system.
that. Yeah. And then Matt gets mad at Spock for how he's handling the situation. He says he's not being aggressive, and he commands Sulu to attack, but Sulu follows Spock. So then Matt tells Spock that he is taking command, and Spock tells him he already killed his crew, so he would advise against him taking command. Like a single ship is not going to kill it. But he eventually gives over his command to Matt, and Bones tries to stop but can't do anything. Very, very kind of Bones to try to help. But Spock is like, unless you've already done a test on him, there's nothing you can do. And so he tells Bones to leave. And at this point, I was very suspicious of Matt. I was like, okay, you already got your ship killed. Like, you seemed upset by it, but I feel like I've seen a lot of movies and media by now where, I don't know, I was just very suspicious of him that A, that story was true, and B, if he was just trying to get the Enterprise killed now because, you know, he's just a bad dude or something, or working for someone else, or he's not the Commodore. It's someone else pretending to be a Commodore, and they're the ones that like killed everyone. So I was very sus.
Interesting.
Clearly that wasn't the case. He's just a very incompetent. How he became a Commodore, I don't know.
I'm also curious why he's a Commodore in charge of Starship and not a captain. Like Commodore, the rank of Commodore seems to be above captain, but all the Commodores we've seen have been like Starbase commanders. I'm not sure why he's a Commodore on a starship rather than it's one of those things that the rank of Commodore has always been kind of like, what is it? Like, what did they do?
What you?
Yeah.
That's like most people's jobs these days. They say their title and like, okay, but like, what do you do? Because that sounds made up. It sounds like gibberish to me.
Yeah. It's not something we really see outside of the original series, because it's kind of it's above captain but below rear admiral.
Rear
and
admiral?
It just kind of,
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, the admiral ranks, there's like rear admiral, fleet admiral, or rear admiral, vice admiral. I don't remember what the
Vice Admiral makes sense. Rear?
Yes, rear. Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
Flag officers. Rear Admiral, Vice Admiral, Admiral, and Fleet
Why don't they
Admiral.
just call them Bottom Admiral?
Nah. Power bottom?
Yes, exactly. Power Bottom Admiral. There's going to be people over a certain age that are like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
So they decide to chase the robot. Meanwhile, Kirk and Scotty are trying to work on the ship to get it going again. And the robot attacks the Enterprise. But Kirk gets the monitors working at least and sees that the Enterprise is shooting at the robot and is like, what the fuck is happening? And Spock tries to warn Matt, like, you need to stop shooting at it. You're not doing anything. But of course he ignores him. And at this point, the deflectors are now down. They've had severe casualties. But the robot stops firing and apparently tries to tractor beam them in, essentially. And Spock says Matt is attempting suicide if he keeps going and he'll have to relieve him. Which then Matt says to veer off, but of course they can't. They're still being pulled inside the robot machine, whatever. And the Constellation is finally able to get power and it races towards the ship. Kirk fires at it and the Enterprise breaks free, but then the robot goes towards the Constellation. And there's kind of this like back and forth of what the robot machine is going after, and they're both kind of firing at it, and it's kind of tractor beaming them in.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure why your plan of attack would be head on too. Like why Decker thought it would be a good idea to fly directly at the front of that thing rather than like sneaking
Well,
up
they're
behind
being
or from the side.
pulled in.
But when he
But
first
before, you
makes his
mean?
attack run, yeah, like they
Yeah.
go straight at the
I
front
thought
of
he
it.
was firing the sides of it. Someone was firing the sides of it at some point. I think Kirk was at one point. But
Yeah.
yeah, obviously he eventually takes the shuttle into the ship, which is essentially almost the next scene.
Well, the Enterprise
Coming up.
too. I believe the Enterprise like was flying directly at the opening on the front of the, and not the Constellation either. Yeah, the whole.
We'll get to that in memes.
But yeah, it feels like it would have been like Decker was not, and obviously Decker wasn't thinking logically. Clearly, I'm sure Spock would tell
Clearly.
us that. Like just
Very
head on
illogical.
directly to the forehead, attack.
Yeah, it's kind of like in movies or TV shows when either something is like someone's getting like fired or shot at, or like there's like a object coming towards them on the ground and they decide to go straight forward instead of either
Instead of
going
running to the side.
sideways
Yeah.
or zigzag, which I don't know if anyone has watched Leave the World Behind, those on Netflix. I watched it. I personally liked it, but it was okay. But for the first time ever, I thought the family was going to run away from the boat straight ahead, like in every other fucking movie, but they actually ran to the side. I was like, good job. Very smart. You did it. You did it the right way. But like a very famous one is, I think, Rickon in Game of Thrones, when Ramsay is shooting the arrows at him and he just does a straight fucking line. I'm like, serpentine, come on.
Bob and weave. Yeah, bob and weave.
Yeah, it's just so frustrating. Finally, it communications back to the Enterprise. Matt says he's assumed command, and Kirk calls him a lunatic, and he's like, you don't say that to a superior officer. And he's like, oh, well, I'm going to say some things to you, fucker.
Yeah.
And Kirk tells Spock to relieve Matt, and he doesn't leave, so he's like, oh, I'm gonna arrest you, and then he finally leaves after that. And so then Spock has Matt go to sickbay for examination, but obviously it was just to get him out of there. But of course Matt knocks out the guard, which I was like, why did you just send one guard with him? You should have sent like at least two. Come on, Spock, you're smarter than that. And they do some Kirk foo, and the stunt double was very obviously the stunt double for the Commodore once again.
Yeah.
I think that's also part of what I've noticed with these scenes being more like crisper looking, is that you can really tell that the stunt doubles are the stunt doubles this season.
Yeah. Yeah, because
so
we had that with
takes...
Sulu's stunt double in Mirror Mirror. It was like, it's very obviously not Sulu.
And Spock's too.
Yeah.
So then the Commodore takes the shuttle off the ship, and he says he's going after the robot, and Kirk and Spock warn him not to, and yep, he goes into the belly of the beast and he dies. I was like, he's just like, I don't know, like, are you just that stupid? I know there are stupid people, but come on. And once again, how did you get to Commodore if you're this dumb?
So
dumb.
Yeah, what he did is stupid, but I think it's like when we first meet him, he's inconsolable. Like he can't really talk. He's just lost. He thought he saved 400 people that were his crew, and he didn't because they all died. So he's got a major case of survivor's guilt, I think, and grief over the loss of his crew. And I feel like it would be weeks to months of intensive therapy before he should have been able to be in command of anything again. Yeah. So
yeah.
They were definitely dumb decisions, but I don't think that he wasn't in his right mind to make those decisions.
No, I agree, and I think, like I said, like Spock sending two people, or maybe taking over command sooner, or like at that point, Bones could have been like, well, I'm going to examine you now, and then could have gotten the evidence, because I'm sure he would have seen that he wasn't capable of commanding the ship. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Spock,
then,
I can see. Spock is going to follow regulation to the letter because it's Spock. That's what he does.
Yeah. Which I think he obviously takes advantage of that with Spock, which was another reason I was sus of him, because I'm like, he's going to know Spock is going to do whatever the rules are, you know? But
I feel like
yeah.
I feel like you're right. McCoy could have ordered him to report to sickbay for examination to make sure that he was fit, but he didn't. And maybe that was just something they didn't think of, or maybe he couldn't. I don't know.
Yeah, and like, who knows if Matt would have gone.
Yeah, but I mean,
willingly.
if he refused, that's more justification to potentially remove him from command. I don't know. It's a tricky.
Definitely a tricky situation.
Thing. Yeah.
And unfortunately, when there's like power struggles and power plays at hand, that makes it difficult too. This is why hierarchies are stupid. So then right after he dies, Sulu notices that there is a drop in the machine's power, and Kirk asks Spock if he could blast from inside it, and they talk about, you know, this plan. So then Scotty, what?
Come inside the Doomsday Machine?
It. Yes. Scotty beams back to the ship, and then and then of course right after, the transporter goes out again, so drink again. And so they try to beam Kirk aboard, and it shorts out again. And it's like really getting down to the second of him flying the Constellation into the robot, and it's literally like 1 second before, and he's finally able to get beamed out. And the Constellation blows up inside the robot, and it works. It kills it. They are very fucking lucky that it worked. And Kirk and Spock talk about how the H-bomb was a doomsday machine back in the day, and how they basically used that again on this machine. I forget the exact words they used, but it was essentially saying how it was for like a good purpose, where you know, originally it wasn't used for a good purpose. I can't remember the exact wording. It was like something to that extent.
Yeah, it's something to the effect that like, who would have thought that would have been used for a positive outcome or something of that nature. They liked that, and this is the sequence, I believe. They're on the bridge, right? And they're walking like around to the front of the bridge and past the view screen. Like, they liked that shot. They used it twice in this episode of Kirk walking in front of and across the view screen over to the other side of the bridge. They've never they haven't used that shot before, and they used it twice in this episode. They liked that shot for some reason this time.
I did not even notice that. Or I did, and I didn't think anything of it. But yeah, that's true. We haven't really seen that before. I don't know why I didn't notice that. I watched this like 3 times. Anyways, that's all I have for the episode. So yeah, like we said before, no Uhura is so sad, and no Chekhov in this episode, which I don't really care about Chekhov, at least not yet. So that doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, it was an interesting episode. I guess we'll get more into it for the ranking, but overall in general, I was thoroughly like on my toes for a lot of the episode, I would say. Like, I wanted to know what was going to happen, how they were going to get out this situation. But then at the same time, there was also a lot of like repeat things that were happening, which seems to also be a thing in Trek, like in each episode, not just the tropes that we've talked about before and them repeating them, just like a lot of similar scenes to each other, to the point where it's like, okay, like let's do something different here. And it was like last episode, it was so close to being really good, and it just kind of missed the mark on that. But anyways, yeah, talk about that more in ranking.
Yeah. There's I liked that and this is gonna bleed into like favorite moments territory. Like Kirk was actually hands-on fixing stuff in this episode. Like he
Mhm.
was in the
Mhm.
console
I liked that.
tool and actually doing things. They did a good job, even though like Kirk's gonna get beamed over to the Enterprise, and there's no chance that he's not gonna make it. They did a good job with like
The
establishing the
suspense.
tension of that. Yeah, the
Mhm.
suspense.
Mhm.
Like it's odd because I didn't feel it. Like I'm like he's come on.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously he's not gonna die.
Plot armor.
But I recognize that like the things that they did, if you didn't absolutely know that Kirk was gonna make it out, would probably have been good at ratcheting up that tension and suspense for him potentially not making
Yeah.
it out. Which could you fucking imagine if he didn't? Like it never would happen. Never
No.
would happen. But could you
Only in Game of
imagine
Thrones.
if a show just like he doesn't make it? Like
Yeah.
what if Kirk sacrifices himself to save the
Mhm.
rest of the Enterprise crew, and then they have to go on,
In the
continue,
galaxy.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
galaxy. Like Kirk dies this massive hero, and the crew of the Enterprise has to go on with Spock as their captain because first officer is generally going to be
Mhm.
promoted to
Mhm.
captain. Like
Mhm.
that would be an interesting
It would be.
thing to see. But
Maybe in
yeah,
today's world post Game of Thrones and that happening, but definitely not back then. But yeah, like you said, they did a great job of that suspense. I think they've been improving on that because there's been previous episodes where it's like kind of suspenseful, kind of like eh. But I think like with the music, the shots, the back and forth, they just did a good job with it essentially.
yeah.
Let
Did
me
you
see
have
for
anything specific
lines.
for favorite lines?
I think there was a lot of that's what they said in this episode. Oh, Bones had his stereotypical "I'm a doctor, not a mechanic."
Mm-hmm.
And he also said, in plain non-Vulcan English, we've been lucky. He says that. Always got to make a
Mm-hmm.
jab at Spock. Then let's see. Do I have anything else? I think I had something else. I don't know. I think most of mine are. Yeah, I think the rest is that's what they said.
This
Yep,
is another
that's it.
Kirk's like, if only I had some phasers. And Scotty's like, phasers? You've got them. I have one bank recharged. Scotty,
Oh
you
yeah.
just earned your pay for the week.
Which they talk about being paid again.
Yeah.
I know. Interesting. Yep. That's it
It was
for me.
it was there's also a line where Spock says, "Sir, may I offer my condolences for the death of your friend? It's most regrettable." And Kirk's like, "It's regrettable that he died for nothing." Like but then they go on to say, "Oh, maybe he didn't. He gave us a clue, etc., etc." But it was interesting that Kirk's only thought was it's regrettable that he died for nothing.
Yeah.
And we have
I know
that
some
we
people that
have
think that way, and I'm like, I just want to shake you.
we have another instance of Spock going, actually, because Kirk goes, "Am I correct in assuming that a fusion explosion of 97 megatons will result if a Starship impulse engine is overloaded?" "No, sir. 97.835 megatons."
That's right. He did do that.
Spock's kind
Oh,
of pedantic
Spock.
at times.
Yeah. I used to be like that. I was that annoying one that would correct you on every little thing. I still do it sometimes,
I
but
was gonna
most
say,
of the
what do you
time
mean
I'm just
was? No,
like,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I know I still do it sometimes, okay?
Happy birthday.
Trying to be better. It's been a lifelong struggle.
I'm just teasing you. So that will bring us then to that's what they said.
Yes.
And I went first last time.
You
so.
went. Yes, okay. All right. Try to raise it, Lieutenant.
Keep trying.
We're going to board her.
It came up on us fast.
Bones, come with me.
They can't take much more of this.
Ready to give it a try?
Try it now, Captain.
I'm gonna take this thing right down its throat.
Coming, sir.
They won't last long.
Keep it going.
I'm going to ram her right down that thing's throat. They were such similar lines, but I had to do both. Sorry, go ahead.
That plays well into the last one. I found one quite sufficient. Yay!
Yay! That's what they said for Star Trek TOS Season 2, Episode 6, The Doomsday Machine.
Doom. Welcome to You Are Doom.
Dr. Doom.
That is Frisky Dingo. Okay. Yeah, that's Welcome to You Are Doom. That's a Frisky Dingo reference. Anyway.
You're just saying words.
I'm just saying words. That will bring us to episode trivia from Memory Alpha. So, remember at the beginning, I think it was the beginning of this, I said this season appears to have been produced and aired way out of order. Mm-hmm. And you know, some of the episode trivia from Memory Alpha has been wrong. Like this, where it says, this episode marks the debut of the redesigned engineering set. No, it doesn't, because we fucking saw it in previous episodes. However, so like, the Doomsday Machine was 36th episode produced, 35th released. Okay. The Apple, last episode, was the 34th episode released, but the 39th produced. Mirror Mirror was the 33rd episode release, but the 40th produced. So when it seems that like for trivia stuff, for like this is the debut of this, Memory Alpha is going in production order. Because technically this would be the first episode shot that has this set. It's not the first episode that aired with this set. So that's why sometimes I'll read something and be like, well,
kind
that
of annoying.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So,
yeah.
And
it feels like less of a big deal if like it wasn't aired that way, because you know no one saw that except for anyone who was working on the show.
Yep.
Anyways,
so this episode marks the shooting debut of the redesigned engineering set. Dilithium crystal storage units occupy the center of the floor, complete with recycled Horta eggs, which I did not notice, but I'll have to go back and look. A ladder and upper level have been added into what was just a high bank of lighted panels in the first season. So it's interesting that this is like a remodel of that set and not just an entirely new set. The ladder was interesting too, because it's almost like a really steep step stool. Because it's like really steep stairs. It's like a cross between the ladder and stairs. The set is also entered through a short spur hallway now, rather than as a side door off a main corridor. The console across from the forced perspective end of the set has been replaced by a doorway and moved to the main wall to the left of the red grid. The high structures among which Kirk's evil self and Benjamin Finney once hid are not seen in detail, but the emergency manual monitor set was built on stilts on that spot, making its debut in Mirror Mirror. Again, the next episode produced, but previously released.
Totes.
There are usually two full stations between Spock's library computer station and the half station adjacent to the viewing screen, yet as Kirk and Spock walk by that area, only one station can be seen. The picture of the starfield on the bulkhead of the transporter room makes its last appearance in this episode.
Wait, say it again?
There's a picture of a starfield on the wall in the transporter room. This is the last episode that it appears in. Why they took it out?
Okay.
I don't know.
Damn it, Johnny.
Kayla's mad at me.
He didn't tell me I had lipstick. It's because when I put my lip down, it like made a line. So if anyone's been wondering what the fuck that was under my lip, it's not just the shadow. It was lipstick. Anyways, continue.
I couldn't tell because you're literally like
it looked like
this
it.
big on my screen.
Yeah.
So I don't have the because I've got so much other stuff going on. I don't have our self review maximized.
It's fine. It's whatever.
My
Continue.
apologies. Anyway, the year this episode was filmed, AMT produced the first Enterprise model kit. And my models are in the other room. One such kit was used to make the model used for the destroyed constellation. They'll do this a lot. I don't know if they do it much in TOS and again, but and it's not going to be as noticeable because we're looking at the remastered like CG footage, but they do it a lot in Next Generation 2 of kit bashing. So they would take like 2 model kits of the Enterprise and use parts and pieces in different ways. Like you could do like the Enterprise and put 2 extra nacelles out of the bottom of the engineering hall. So then you'd have an Enterprise that has 4 nacelles on it.
Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open up doors, and here's all the people.
Yeah. The decals for the ship's registration numbers are just a rearranged version of 1701. The model does not have the details of the regular Enterprise miniatures. I have a photo of it that I'll put up on the screen while we're talking about this so people can see. But it's interesting because it's like, so if they're going to go to the effort of, so the registry number for this is 1017 because they just rearranged the 1701 from the Enterprise decal model kit. But they had to obviously do something to come up with USS Constellation because there are no letters. There's some letters, but very few letters of Enterprise cross over with Constellation.
There's not a C. There's not an O. There's not a L. There's not an A.
And there's not enough.
Oh, there's not an O.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so they went to the effort to make the word Constellation, but they couldn't go and make a different registry number. Not that it matters, but there are not 700 Constitution class starships between the Constellation and the Enterprise. Because registry numbers should indicate, amount of
when it was made.
So 1701 should mean the Enterprise is theoretically 1701 starship produced for Starfleet. If the Constellation is 1017, that means it would be the 1017th starship produced. But there are not, 600 plus Constitution class starships made between the Constellation and the Enterprise. Now it's possible because you'll see some ships are, whatever registry number dash A, B, C, D. I can talk, I promise. Indicate that is another ship of that line. So, like, it's another ship named Enterprise. Because obviously the Next Generation is NCC 1701D. It's the 4th starship. No, it's the 5th because there would be the Enterprise and then the A, B, C, and D. It's the 5th starship Enterprise. So it just gets the dash and the letter after it. E, F, G. But anyway, so this is just a model kit that is modified and damaged to make it look like another ship. To your point about the music, I threw this in because I didn't originally have this in, but since you specifically brought up the music, I added it. This episode features an original score by Sol Kaplan. So all that music that you're like is new, except 36 seconds of Alexander Courage's Captain's Wig. That's the name of the song, is Captain's Wig, a.k.a. Kirk's theme, is heard after Kirk tells Spock, "I'm going to ram her right down that thing's throat." Had to say it one more time.
One more time. Classic.
I find it interesting that Kirk's theme is Captain's Wig. I'm wondering if that, I haven't looked it up, but I'm wondering if the Captain's Wig is like a phrase for something, not literally like a wig, but like, and Kaplan's suspenseful countdown music written for this episode was reused in many second season episodes. So you'll hear that quite a bit going forward, apparently. That'll do it for episode trivia.
Fascinating.
Thank you. I was waiting for it. That will bring us to spoilers without context. So since Ensign Kayla went first last time, we'll bring my spoilers without context up on the screen. And
honestly works better that way anyways.
Yeah, it kind of does. I had to include from Shore Leave the Rigel chorus girls because of the mention of Rigel.
I was wondering why that was there.
Yeah.
Any excuse to use them, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, that was another episode where we talked about this last episode where it's like people would be chilling to live there if you didn't think bad thoughts all the time, but like, you know, they gotta interfere. Anyways.
Yes.
Explain the bugles, because I do not understand that.
Look at the Doomsday Machine. It looks like a bugle.
Kind of. I mean, it doesn't really get that skinny at the end. I don't think.
It totally.
And it's longer.
That's what they said. Yeah, it's totally a bugle. The Doomsday Machine is a bugle. And then Moby Dick, because I mean that's Decker in the Doomsday Machine. It's Moby Dick.
And then, the Constellation too.
Yeah. Without giving any spoilers, I used the plane from Godzilla -1. And if you've seen Godzilla -1, you know why, and that's all I'll say. Because I don't want to spoil Godzilla -1. So, we'll bring Ensign Kayla's spoilers without context up on the screen. And there's there's somewhat of a running theme throughout these.
I don't know what you're talking about. So it all started with, I obviously had to do the butthole sandworm from Dune. That was the first thing I thought of, because anytime there's something that looks like this, I gotta do the butthole sandworm. And then I was like, wait, there's like the Sarlacc pit in Star Wars, and then there's also the one with the Millennium Falcon, and then there's also Beetlejuice. So I was like, there's many different ones. I'm just gonna use all of them to reference the Doomsday Machine. And there's other ones too out there, but I decided to use those, and I was like, that's it. I'm not gonna do anything else. You're welcome.
Okay.
Johnny thought I was gonna do a fleshlight, but I decided not to.
Yeah, well, I was partially joking because
looks very much like a fleshlight, especially because like the end of it is thicker than the rest of it. Just saying.
Speaking of, I'm gonna throw this up on the screen while we talk about it because it's odd.
I'm scared.
So this is the Doomsday device as it appeared
so
in this episode. Yeah, it is. So
enhance.
Yeah, that's what was in this episode.
Yeah.
This is
I guess it does kind of look like a bugle. Yeah.
This is the original effect. Like this is the model that they used. I feel
that
like
pretty
it's
good.
better.
Yeah. I mean, there's some up close shots that even in the remastered are like, like of the sides of it, but that looks pretty good. It almost looks like a ice thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that is more bugle shaped. I thought it was longer for some reason. LOL. That's what they said. Interesting. Fascinating. Oh god.
Yeah, I kind of prefer the original model.
Sometimes people just prefer the original.
Apparently it was made with like reflective gaffer's tape.
The head of it is definitely thicker than the See, especially on the remastered. But like that's like okay, a flashlight in the new one.
Flashlight or
I'm just gonna call it a flashlight so we don't get I don't know.
Anyway, that will
Thanks.
bring us to ranking the episode.
I almost forgot.
Ensign Kayla, how do you rank the Doomsday Machine?
I've thought a lot about this.
Really? Because you usually don't.
It's a joke.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I kind of have with watching it, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm like, it's so close to being really good, and it was definitely suspenseful. Yeah, it had me very intrigued. That's not the right word I'm trying to think of. I was very like on the edge of my seat, wondering what was going to happen, how they were going to get out of this. And in terms of that stuff, I thought it was really good. The whole Commodore Matt of it all, not so good. Like, kind of dumb, and just like how they handled it. But it did add to the plot, did add to the suspense. It was their kind of wrench cog in the machine, literally. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna give it, I almost said Commodore, a Commander.
That would be fitting though, right?
Yeah. A Commander. I don't think you have to watch it. I think, yeah, it's really good. It's also, yeah, something new we haven't seen before, which is great. Yeah, like very different from what we've seen before. I think, yeah, like Kirk being involved and like how they were able to use the constellation. Yeah, it almost seemed like pretty close to what like a modern day Star Trek episode would be like. Like it seemed kind of similar to the Strange New Worlds, Stranger Things, Strange New Worlds episodes that we've seen in that regard. So yeah, but it's not quite, it just doesn't quite hit all the way, I would say. So Commander, not Commodore.
Okay. Yeah, Commodore would mean it would be above Captain. So that's
yeah, exactly.
That's not where you're going.
No.
And we have not yet broken our ranking system. I don't think we will end up doing so at this point. I mostly abstained from giving anything Admiral to, or I mean, if anything deserved, the alternative factor deserved fucking Cadet, but how much lower can you get than skippable? Like,
yeah, really.
Just don't watch that episode.
True.
I'm gonna give the Doomsday Machine Captain. For me, it's a legacy thing. More so that it's one of those iconic episodes that is very often brought up in discussion of Star Trek.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. If
I had known, I probably would have put it as Captain then.
I mean, you still have time.
I'll keep it.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. Here's some things about why. I mean, it's fine in general. It's your opinion. Nobody needs to tell you that your opinion is fine. You know what I mean. Anyway,
yes.
James Doohan, in a mid-1980s appearance at the University of Nevada, claimed that this is his favorite episode of Star Trek. TV Guide ranked this as the 4th best Star Trek episode for their celebration of the franchise's 30th anniversary.
Like,
it was
overall?
Yeah. The original series. Just the original series.
Okay.
Not anything else.
I was like, wow.
It was nominated for a Hugo Award in 1968 as Best Dramatic Presentation.
Definitely dramatic. That checks out.
Although considered to be a classic episode by fans and critics alike, Story editor Dorothy Fontana named this as her least favorite episode. So it's interesting that even among people who worked on the show, that for DC Fontana, this is her least favorite episode of the original series, which means that she likes the alternative factor more than this, and I question the logic there. But
yeah, I mean, could also be because like there's essentially almost like no women doing anything in this episode.
That's fair,
except for the lady at the beginning for like 5 seconds.
Yeah,
she doesn't really do anything though, not for plot purposes, at least. No. So are you gonna give your own opinions, or are you just gonna use historical facts?
No, I was just using that to like I said, I think it's a fine episode. I like it. If I were just ranking it on, I'm ranking it captain. My rank is captain because it is an iconic, like historically significant episode because it's so well regarded. I would probably, if I'm just ranking it on how I felt about the episode, it could potentially be an ensign. Like, it's not really relevant to anything else that happens. There's no character development for anybody on the ship.
No. But I mean, there's been a lot of good episodes that haven't had character development and just been exciting.
Yeah, I would go like, I don't know. It's somewhere. It's either commander or captain. It's hard to say exactly. The fact that it's an iconic, like, top ranked episode is what tips it for me over to captain.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't know if outside of that it is absolutely essential to watch. But yeah. My rank is captain.
Okay, sounds good. Checks out.
It's another one of those historical, like, stuff pushes it over the edge, whereas episode on its own merits content in this day and age might just be a commander. But I'm going with
It's funny because even though I didn't know that, it felt like it might have been. Just because I did enjoy it and it was a different plot and trope and whatever. But yeah, I think if I had known that, I would probably have given it captain as well. But I didn't, so I'm giving it commander.
Okay.
And that's our rankings.
We'll see. We'll see where the premiere chat ends up with the poll.
Yeah.
But, that will bring us to our next episode, Cat's Paw. IMDb.com says, very alien visitors to our galaxy attempt to connect with human consciousness, but miss, winding up tapping into the regions of human nightmares instead. Interesting that it's another outside our galaxy thing, because they said the Doomsday Machine was from outside our galaxy, and now these are very alien visitors to our galaxy, implies that they are from outside our galaxy.
Yeah. Interesting. I have no idea. I haven't watched it yet. I like the name though.
Would you say?
I'm curious.
Fascinating.
Yes. I'm curious because when I was younger, me and my dad would do this thing called cat's paw, where one of us would put out our hand and say cat's paw, and the other one had to go did, and that was it. So I'm curious if it has anything to do with that at all. Or if that was just a thing that people did in the olden days. Because it
makes me think of
almost 80.
there used to be a board game called Cat's Eye. Have you ever heard of that? So it was essentially kind of like, you know how Hungry Hippos had all the marbles and you had to eat all the marbles. Cat's Eye still had a thing with marbles, but you had to fill in, like, you had a tray that was shaped like a cat and it had holes for marbles, and one marble was a different color, and you had to get that one sent into the eye for the cat to make the cat's eye.
Interesting. Okay.
So, all right, that'll do it.
Thanks everyone for joining us. If you're watching on the premiere, if you're watching on the replay, thanks for watching as well. Make sure to smack that like, smack that subscribe, smack that bell icon. And if you want to follow us on any of our social medias, our handle is at GTFO channel. If you want to email us, our email is channelgtfo@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for geeking the F out with us. Until next time, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.